really thrilled to be here with Geza Schoen and Paul White. All right. Well, so both of you, would you just briefly introduce yourselves and your role within Escentric Molecules before we get started?
Geza. Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Wonderful to be here. Well, I'm Geza Schoen, the founder and the perfumer behind Escentric Molecules, and yeah, that's my role.
Hi, I'm Paul White, one of the co-founders and the creative director of Escentric Molecules.
Thanks, guys. And I'm Saskia. Nice to meet you. Paul, let's start with you because I love perfume, obviously, and we'll get there, but I'm also really interested in design. And you have a very strong background in design for music. You know, you had a music label, and then also you worked with the Sugar Cubes and had a long-standing collaboration with York, which probably doesn't get any cooler. So I'm curious about how this translated to working with scent for you.
Not very easily. It's the simplest answer. But effectively, one of the things that I learned in my background of working with independent bands and artists back in the 1980s was that pretty much the only publicity these artists would get was the record sleeve, the cover itself. So whatever we were doing and putting on the cover was the best shot they had, apart from the music itself, to get publicity, to get exposure, to attract someone to pick up the record, you know, take it to a deck, listen to it, or, you know, whatever. And when we started conceiving of Escentric Molecules, it was a very similar proposition. You know, we had no money. It was entirely funded. We were, as was said earlier, flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't really know what we were doing in terms of launching a fragrance brand. And it became clear that encoding and creating a packaging idea, if you like, because in those days that's really what it was going to be the only thing we had to present this product. We didn't really think beyond, at least I didn't really think beyond that point. It was a case of how do we present this? And working in music really in those days gave me a fantastic grounding of how to think about a product in a way that was not certainly not a traditional fragrance way of doing it. You know, come up with a name, come up with a brand, slap that on the package, you know, white box, you know, kind of gold foiled stamped logo, and the name of the fragrance, and everyone falls asleep, and then we're done.
Yeah. And so this was obviously quite different. I mean, you said in the company statement, a German techno fragrance was always going to be something that I would understand. So what about this felt different, or you know, what made sense to you about this particular, about Geza?
Oh my gosh, I so super. I mean, Molecular One, what an extraordinary thing to have given to you as a sort of product idea. You know, the Geza's Molecular One fragrance was just such an extraordinary thing to wrap your head around. I mean, it was arcane. It was so interesting. It would come and it would go. And in fact, it was that coming and going, that almost switching on off, that actually gave me the kind of strongest clues as to where to head in terms of the visual storytelling and the packaging.
In what sense? How do you translate that coming and going?
Because it was like a switch. It was like on and off, and it was, in that sense, it was very binary. And then I started to realize that one of the things I really wanted to do was make this package as kind of arcane as I could, while still, you know, presenting a box that contained a fragrance. And in doing that, one of the things we employed was binary, was using binary to encode messaging and to use binary to break up the branding and put bits of branding, even down to the ingredient list. The INCI list on the packaging was encoded into binary and printed on the carton. So we had all of these kind of things that made it, added information and encoded that information in a way that made it all feel a lot more kind of secretive and interesting. We even used, really strong grid structures to kind of keep this kind of binary logic to all of the things that we did.
Wow. So, I mean, so let's look at the package quickly because let me see. Sorry, this is where my middle-aged brain starts to fall apart. Share screen. I can do this. Because I'm curious about forgive me for asking more formal questions, but I mean, so how is the binary manifesting on here?
Okay, let me, if you close your share screen.
Yes, I will.
I'll drag one out of the drawer.
Yay, even better, real life.
And then I'll put it up to the camera.
Great.
And you can see on the back of the package.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
There's all the binary.
Oh, amazing. Incredible.
And of course, we've got to do it again now because they've just changed the Inky list.
Oh. Oh boy. So binary, so I guess the sort of the off on 0 1 is sort of a direct correlation to sort of the digital sound experience, I suppose. So that's how the German techno connection came.
Yes, for me, yes, it was this. Well, obviously techno is about sound, but it's also in its instance digitally created,
Right.
and that kind of digital creation struck a chord with me, and it was also a very flippant statement. I mean, it's not something I want to kind of die on a hill defending.
No, but it's telling, you know what I mean? I mean, it places it in a certain space that isn't, let's say, glass and tradition and blah blah,
But this idea of an aroma molecule that didn't exist in nature, that was entirely created in a lab, that had this extraordinary quality, that was magical. It was just so unusual and so inspiring.
Mm. Do you feel, I guess maybe there's a question for you. Do you feel that molecule one is, this is going to maybe be a stupid question, but do you think it's a digital fragrance? Because I do associate it with a certain time and place in perfumery where we kind of move to the digital world and etc.
No, I think that's really just coincidence. Just if you think back that the molecule exists since 1973, there was no digital then. And, if anybody would have sort of done for their brand, what we had done for us with Molecular One, it probably would have worked the same way. So I think it's just a coincidence, but I was going to say I think actually it's, and when Paul was telling us how sort of he had the inspiration, I was thinking the actual very first thing we all as human beings sort of do is there is an impulse to something which, has got to do with communication. We want to be heard. We want to sort of be recognized and we want to communicate. And the weirdness about Molecular One, which we then later found out after we had launched it for years, was that stuff actually did stimulate one of the 5 remaining pheromone receptors and acted like a pheromone. So even though, we had seen pheromone stuff happening before, but that was not the same thing. So all of a sudden, there's an ingredient which was rarely available, and anybody could have sort of gone our route. The ingredient translates and qualifies as to be stimulating one of our human pheromone receptors. That's far out. And for that, I see best sort of what Paul was saying with the, it's there and it's not, and then it's there again, the on-off sort of story. But fundamentally, I think a fragrance should always be a little story, or should have a narrative, or should be, you will remember it. And that we have probably condensed to its most linear and shortest form possible. And that's a funny anecdote, I think.
Huh. I should say my internet just went out momentarily. So Levi, I made you co-host just in case. Because I heard everything, thankfully. But just so you all know, for some reason we're having some LA drama. Sorry, so I lost my train of thought a little bit, but so I'll just jump back into a pre-scripted question. You mentioned in your bio that Molecule One, Geza, would only sell to the artists, the freaks, the arcane. What was it about the idea that you felt was, arcane or freaky in some way?
Well, that was born out of the sheer sort of situation I was in when I was growing up, let's say between 13, 14 and 18, when, you know, boys and girls sort of get going, the hormones start coming, and you're sort of revealing a whole new sort of world. And there is smells. And even back then in, let's say, the mid 80s, there were perfumes around. So some people wore perfume, some didn't. And most of my friends who I'd spoken to about that at the time, they just weren't wearing a fragrance because it was too strong. They just, you know, couldn't be bothered. So they'd rather wear nothing than a fragrance. And the whole idea to sort of just take that one ingredient, which has an olfactoric appearance. It has a smell, yes, it's faint, and it's not what you expect of a fragrance, but it was the ultimate veil around a human body. And that's how we encountered it the first time, when my friend walked into this bar and this lady sort of stood still right in front of him and said, "Who smells so nice here?" So it was the first test that it was possible to attract someone with just a singular aroma chemical. So, you know, lots of things happened around that phenomenon, and some were planned, some weren't. But it's all good so far.
And so how do you, I mean, so describe the olfactory landscape at the time in perfumery. What were the perfumes that were kind of in the mix when you came out with this? Just because it's such a break from something, and I'm not sure if everyone understands how profound that break was.
I mean, I obviously, yeah, basically you could say I took the whole 80s with that fragrance development as I was there. I noticed things, I smelled fragrances which came up. I'd say probably like in the late 80s, things like Cool Water and Fahrenheit were really big hitters. That was really quite something for themselves. The whole Tresor, Sophia Grossmann, IFF kind of trail back then, which appeared, was something. And I mean, there were iconic fragrances around, yet there was, you know, I didn't become a perfumer to finally decide one day to fill a single aroma chemical into a bottle and sell it. That was just almost like a joke. But in hindsight, it's good to see that next to the, let's say, very stable yet sort of kind of stuck fragrance market, maybe up to the zeros, before it kind of stopped, that things became, I don't know, a fragrance was a story. There was a narrative. If you go back, just like, I mean, I'm drifting off here, but I think it's an interesting topic. When you go back to the Calvin Klein development, right? When they started early 80s, there was Obsession, then came Eternity, then came Escape. And they were all like sort of, there was the mirror of society almost. There were topics within sort of human society, and that stopped when they came out with Contradiction. And as already the name suggested, it was completely blurry, and it just, they've lost sort of the storytelling, I'd say, which was interesting. And then to make a cross leap maybe into sort of the nowadays fragrance, we're seeing I mean, a crazy development of sort of, it needs to be strong. You need to be noticed, and it doesn't really matter what it smells of, as long as you are noticed, that's good enough. So it's a crazy curve to where we've ended up at these days. But yeah, as I apologize for drifting off, but
No,
just
I like the drifting, please. It makes me work less. Drift
just
more.
just recently, Paul and I have been to the Cannes tax-free
Market.
fair, and obviously lots of people were met and lots of talks and lots of impressions, which was very, very telling in many ways. That yeah, just what I described with the appearance of sort of very strong and in-your-face fragrances. That's the trend right now.
Yeah. And so when, I mean, do you equate that to any particular molecule, like for instance, Amber Extreme or these super ambers? Is that something that you feel is a part of that, or?
Well, of course it is. I mean, olfactorically, I would make the decision. I would make the distinction between ambroxan and all its derivatives and sort of whatever it's on the ambroxan field, and the rest like the amber extreme or the ambrosinide or the numerous other really strong, punchy, piercing, woody chemicals which have occurred over the last, well, decade really in that sort of high amounts. I mean, ambroxan certainly has more of an olfactoric feature in itself. It has more of a sort of a detectable mineral olfactoric presence, as where these other ingredients are sort of rather fantasy, if at all. I mean, I'm sure if you show one of these ingredients to somebody on the street, they wouldn't go, "Oh, that smells woody." So, but we've learned to identify and work with them as woody ingredients. But the other skill certainly is just the projection it gives,
Right.
and the lasting for a fragrance.
Yeah. Are there molecules that you just would never consider for your line? Like, I guess, are there molecules that you just don't like? Like, for instance, I don't like cologne, you know, I just don't like the smell. Is there anything like for you? And I know that it's functional, but
yeah, cologne, funnily enough, also would be on my list of the chemicals I certainly would never touch. And I mean, I do work with the stuff sometimes, but probably in way low dosages than maybe the market requires sometimes. So yeah, of course, I mean, basically all molecules don't qualify. I would seriously even say today that only the 5 we've launched still make sense to me, as they happen to have a complexity which is rare. Not every chemical has got that, clearly not, which automatically says that most molecules need the help of other molecules, if not naturals, to be surrounded by, to then make sense within the composition. So yeah, I mean, there could be probably some molecules we, could launch and you could smell them on skin, but do I really want anyone to be smelling of those? Probably not. I mean, we've been, Paul, didn't we? We've been thinking about that for years, to sort of like what to do. And we went through test rows of various aroma chemicals, but it's, we're not just doing it for the sake of it. It needs to make sense. Somebody needs to want to be wearing that and thinking, that smells great. This is what I want to be smelling of.
So I guess, and Paul, are you deeply involved in this sort of process of, how do you guys work together? Like, is there a symbiotic relationship between the two of you in terms of your creative processes?
Yeah, there is a bit. The process will obviously start with Geza and formulating a fragrance, or presenting an idea for a molecule to be used as a standalone fragrance. And then it's a case of us, kind of discussing it and figuring out what is it in there that's special and interesting, and that we would extract, or try and extract, in terms of a visual narrative. And sometimes, those things, well, often those things will be being developed at the same time. So I'll be working on a visual story, and Geza will be, I mean, if it's not a molecule, if it's an actual, kind of fragrance with many other ingredients, we'll be developing that. And sometimes we'll swap over. He'll show me what he's doing, and I'll send him stuff on what I'm doing. And sometimes that is an interesting kind of iterative process that feeds each other. Not always, but it's happened. But it's very natural. It's very kind of relaxed. We've never had a kind of issue with creatively communicating. And I think probably that's why we're still happily doing it 20 years on.
Yeah, because collaboration can be tough, eh?
Yeah.
Actually, let's quickly look at sorry, forgive me, I'm visual and I like to look at the images. So I'm just going to open up some of the images of the different bottles, because I mean, like everybody, I've obviously encountered this quite a bit in my world. It's sort of a joke that the smell of art openings in LA is molecule 1, or 2 or 3, most often 1. And of course, you guys have a big presence here with with Lucky Scent and Scent Bar, but I've never actually really sat with these bottles and seen how different they are from one another. Because visually they're very consistent.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, the visual storytelling that we use and the graphic language is all from the same stable.
Right.
It employs a particular way of graphically working, and in
Yeah.
that sense, it is kind of quite highly digital in appearance, but there is a consistency in the way that they're presented, and that in a way is our kind of branding framework.
Yeah. Do you have assets that you grab from that they're always consistent, like a style guide for the brand that you developed?
Um, Not so much. We tend to sort of start thinking, well, first of all, we're very much kind of focusing on almost a kind of synesthesia of process where what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to visually present something that actually, if you could smell it, and if you could convert it into a smell, would come as close as possible to the fragrance itself. And so there'll be kind of lime elements in the O3, and I mean it's fairly easy to decode it. And I think that that approach has its roots right back to what we were talking about earlier on, which is this presenting the product in as close a representational way to the fragrance as possible and communicate as much as possible about it solely through the packaging.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a moment and talk through one example. So how would we decode this? What about this? I believe it's cashmeran. Is that correct? Molecule 4?
No, this is
Java
essential.
Sorry?
This is
Java
essential. Sorry. Okay, so the only binary on this bottle is in the top corner.
Okay, right there. I see that.
Yeah. And that will just be, that binary decodes to an E. So it's repeating the EO4
Uh-huh.
up in that corner. If we go to the pack, let's have a look on any one of those.
Okay, let's go to this one.
Okay. What's on here? Yeah, the binary is probably on the back, so we're not going to be able to talk much about encoding and information on it. It's not.
But visually, I mean, this to me, I can't remember which molecule is which. Forgive me. Which one is O3, Geza?
vetiver acetate.
Vetiveryl acetate. Okay, okay. So there's that vetivery greeny aspect. Yeah. Okay. That. All right. Because I guess, Paul, what I'm trying to get at is there's so much data contained in a smell, right? And it's so. I mean, we all have our perceptions, and they're often similar, but they're sometimes vastly different. So, how do you take the ineffably human experience of smelling and the subjectivity of it, often, not always, but often, and turn that into something that conveys something universally, and it's an impossible question. I don't, but
Through a lot of trial and error.
okay.
We sort of test things out, experiment, grow on from those experiments. We always do significant kind of print trials on a visual idea from the early stages, and we'll very much kind of think in terms when we have a design that we want to try and test out in printing, we'll think very much in terms of ink construction. That Escentric 03 uses 11 inks, 11 colors that are constantly layered on top of each other or knocked out of each other just to kind of build up this depth. And obviously with the photograph, someone's just delivered this for me.
Nice.
I'm very grateful. But there you go. There's the binary on the back.
Oh, nice. Someone asked earlier, actually, Paula asked, does the binary translate into, where's the question? Does that mean we can translate the binary code to sound?
Not to sound, but certainly to letters.
Oh, cool.
And words, obviously.
Nice. So, Geza, because, I mean, and I'm sure this is embarrassing when you hear this, but you know, you've been described in so many ways: a renegade, a rebel, avant-garde, unconventional, blah blah. How do you relate to this? Does that embarrass you, or are you kind of proud of that?
I mean, I think I can live with unconventional in the sense that I stepped out of the industry and started working on my own when no one was doing that. So I was certainly kind of a renegade maybe when it comes to that. But I think overall, one of the good things obviously was that we kind of made chemicals sexy. I would certainly say that we had a big portion in that. And maybe hopefully it also helped other perfumers to do it similarly. I mean, bottom line is obviously, you know, you can keep on working in the fragrance industry and work on briefings and sort of, you know, work on fragrances, whatever the application might be. But it's only really when you are out there and you have access to people more directly and you sort of work stronger with disciplines you weren't ever involved with before. Because when you're employed, you know, you go there every day, lay an egg, and then you go home. And that's fabulous, don't get me wrong. But what I would say is, yeah, being independent is a completely different story.
How is it different? I mean, because you've done both, obviously. So
I mean, first of all, you need to organize the whole thing for yourself. So I never had like an assistant. So all the fragrances I work on, obviously I do mix in my lab myself and do the whole bit you started doing when you were a trainee. You know, when I started 35 years ago, that's what I would do every day because there was no one doing it for you. So that's interesting to go back to that a lot, obviously. That makes a change. Obviously, I've been with IFF now for nearly 20 years, so I use their raw material and their palette, which is great because they have LMR, Laboratoire Monique Remy, within their company. And so this is basically all I need. You know, I need a scale and I need some pipettes and the ingredients and a few beakers and off I go. There's nothing lost really from not being around other perfumers, evaluators, and people working in a fragrance company to where I am on my own, basically having an idea or translating an idea into a formula. So, of course, there's lots of advantages if I would be still in the fragrance industry with other perfumers and those evaluators around. But you know, I've learned to do that basically most of it myself, and I'm still here, and it still feels all right.
you congratulations. You mentioned that molecules maybe you didn't mention it, but you said that you sort of paved the way for some lab created molecules to be sexy, which is true because I think I don't know. I mean, I'm in Los Angeles. There's a lot of like chemophobia, shall we say, you know, and I certainly think that there's a certain sort of group of folks that are more susceptible or more interested in synthetic molecules or lab created molecules because of your work. But my that's sort of the background to the question. Do you think that these molecules carry meaning for you? I mean, for instance, when you smell ISOE Super, I'm sure it has a lot of meaning because it's basically the story of the beginning of your brand. But are there things that you smell where you're like, this conveys something that I think is universal?
I've never thought about that, simply because I do see certainly the molecules we've chosen to become, you know, contenders within our ideology. They just happen to smell great on their own. It's just that I think the whole idea of bringing something or boiling something down to its, you know, its smallest possible unit, which for us in perfumery are the aroma chemicals, because they, as I said before, you know, some really smell just in one direction, and you need lots of others around to make sense of that. And some just happen to be as complex and wonderful and interesting within itself that it's just I just hold the key to the gate where all these molecules sit behind and within the paradigm of perfumery have been used over the past few decades and maybe 1.5 centuries even within a certain framework. And I'll let them free. I'll let them go on their own. And as much as, for example, Molecule 03 will never be a big seller, but then it's still.
Which one is 3? Sorry, forgive me.
Apologies. That certainly then is for only a few people really what they always dreamt of, and it's great to be offering, I think, very kind of, certainly with the molecules, very arcane, different, singular smells, which enable people who aren't that close to perfumery and who don't want like a full-on fragrance with whatever else they would have as an alternative. And yeah, that feels probably best. But I'm a humble dude at the end of the day, and so is Paul. So yeah.
I think you mentioned Molecular 3. I think Molecular 3 really symbolizes so much of what I think is fantastic about the Molecule line. It's vetiver acetate, same as Escentric 03. It was taken from vetiver grass, and then it was chemically altered in the lab by snipping a branch off of it to remove a slightly more kind of unpleasant note, landing on this really pure, rich, kind of musty vetiver note that is just so beautiful and such a lovely fragrance to wear. And all of that engineering, all of that kind of technology that's gone into that, just to me is a real celebration of the modern world. And I love that product.
I echo your I think the chemical, I mean, God bless the chemists. I mean, what delights of human endeavor that we bear the benefit of,
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the history of olfactory chemistry. So Cashmeran, Geza, what made you decide to pick Cashmeran? It's I know not one, but 3 people who have the Cashmeran molecule tattooed on their bodies.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's thanks to you or because they love Cashmeran, but what was it about Cashmeran that spoke to you specifically?
That's far out. I'm shocked. That's really quite something.
Three people.
Well, listen, Cashmere back then in the early 90s when I joined perfumery, I mean, first of all, it was, fabulous for its name, came from IFF. So you always like those ingredients more, which other companies produce than the ones you did yourself. And it's just a very solid, one of those few wooden chemicals which have so solidly established themselves over very few decades that it's a very complex molecule. It has not just a woody, but also a musky appeal, I would say. It's kind of a mix almost, but the complexity is within the sort of very specific piney, dry wood chips connotation to, there's almost something like a little fruity with a musk, which makes it super complex as an aroma molecule. And I'm very attracted to Cashmeran throughout my perfumistic career, as most perfumers probably would say, I think. And its complexity and its difference to the other molecules we have previously launched, I think, made it attractive to do that as well.
I think one of the things I really like about your project, you guys, is that, and back to the meaning question, when you say galaxolide, cashmeran, cosmone, habanolide, these names they carry meanings, you know what I mean? They're marketing names, obviously. And
yeah,
in the case of the musks, I can't help but think of 1950s tail fins, and there's all this conveyance. And by reducing that to the package design that you have and the name of the perfumes, Molecule 5, it kind of strips it of that meaning and it gives it a whole different meaning. So if I pick up Cashmeran, I'm expecting something. If I pick up Molecule 5 with the visual language and the name, I'm expecting something completely different, and yet it's the same molecule. So that's kind of what I was, that's kind of why I was asking you about the meaning, Geza, because I don't know, I work a lot with in the public, and people ascribe all this stuff to these materials, and they have all this baggage, as it were, and it feels like you just kind of strip that away with the visual language and also the presentation. So I don't know if that's a question so much as a comment, so sorry.
It's an interesting comment, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, we basically release something which until then was hidden. It's almost like, you know, imagine maybe there are a few materials you would work with for making furniture, but all of a sudden, you know, you have 5 more ingredients and they look quite nice and they feel nice. And yes, they do qualify for being implemented in the structure of a chair, and it gives you a different, different style in that moment for what there has been and maybe was caught within that paradigm for so long.
Yeah. So using that metaphor, if the molecule, the single molecule series are the chairs, the M plus series would be the decoration, or the oh God, the interior decor. How do you go about constructing one of those compositions? What Sorry, it's early for me. I haven't had enough coffee. What informs the perfume production when you're translating, like, say, ISO super into the plus series? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
You mean
The
because you mentioned
Escentric series. Sorry.
the Escentric series, right?
Sorry.
Well, the Escentric series basically are an homage to the molecule, and obviously my particular homage, as where another perfumer would interpret the material differently, or, you know, would find other aspects within the molecule so interesting to push those or to emphasize those more. So going back maybe to Escentric 01, it was meant to be a really skin sexy fragrance for myself, and reduce it to what I would enjoy within a fragrance, which within also the task to have obviously radiance and a silage which sort of travels and attracts sort of the people. It's very big, woody, musky, balsamic, only with a very little top and a little heart. And that was my best translation for it, as where the other molecules translate differently in the later eccentric fragrances. But it's ultimately to say, okay, you're not a molecule man or a molecule woman. Fair enough. That might be too far-fetched, and it's too simple, and it seems too arcane. But we have played with that particular molecule of value within a fragrance structure. And so it comes that all the eccentrics basically are a fragrance corresponding to the molecule.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So Escentric 1, you say there's lime peel, green jasmine bud, hedione, soft balsams, and musk. And I love it. Then you say, be warned, these fragrances are considered a dangerous aphrodisiac.
All right.
I'm warned. Be careful, everybody. Do you play with those? I mean, there's some fragrance conventions, some tropes in perfumery, you know, that perfume is seductive, you know, I don't know, these different sort of thing, it's tied to memory, these things that come up over and over and over again. Do you like playing with that stuff? I mean, do you like tweaking that a little bit or making fun of it a little bit? I feel like there's a lot of humor in your brand, at least looking at the language, you know.
We don't take it ourselves too seriously, that's for sure.
I appreciate that, actually. Have there been any missteps, any mistakes? We're always talking about success. What about failure? Have there been failures of note in your time?
I'll be back in 1 hour, Paul. You carry on.
Yes, of course. Everyone makes mistakes. I think that none of the mistakes kind of stick, because we always just change, evolve, correct, and adjust. So I can't think of anything that, I mean, it's an absolute blinding mistake, apart from, I think maybe once we We had an inky list problem on a carton. I think we printed the wrong inky list on the box, which was a big mistake, and that was annoying. But generally, I can't think of anything that
that's congratulations, because I could think of like 8 that I made last week.
changed things a lot. If we keep doing that, but yeah, I mean, but that's all just part and parcel of slowly kind of evolving the visual storytelling.
How do you feel about the early iterations of the design? Has it evolved through time? Have you redesigned?
It has. It really has. The first Escentric Molecular one was so dark and so heavy. And we over the years we've slowly kind of lightened that a little bit. You can now actually read the branding on the cover, whereas when we launched it, you couldn't. There was so much kind of going on. We changed the bottle. We originally were using a kind of standard Formulae flacon, which was, I believe, based on an old Chanel bottle. And then we developed our own. So as time's gone on, yeah, we've definitely made changes and additions to what we produce.
And Geza, for you, for the Escentric line, have you had to reformulate at any point, or you've been fortunate in that regard?
Yeah, now and then there is a reformulation task on the table. Minor things, nothing completely dramatic. I mean, certainly with changes like Lilial and Lyral, which were kicked out. I mean, that must have been devastating for some fragrances where they contained 5, 10, whatever, 15% of that stuff, and you can't really replace it. So that's more like a real kill for a fragrance, and you rather discontinue then, I think. But for us, little changes, but the usual stuff every fragrance goes through once a year, sort of thing.
How do you feel about it? Does it frustrate you, or do you? I mean, you hear a lot of chatter, on the internet, of course, around this. So
yeah, I mean, look, it's something we have no choice.
Yeah.
It's I could sort of flip every day and be really mad at sort of the whole idea of the legislation and stuff, but it's a given. You have to work with it. Very few brands maybe even working around it, but we weren't going to go there. So we do apply to whatever legislation we have to apply with.
I mean, to me, it's never caused us a problem where it's changed a fragrance significantly or for that matter even really noticeably. And what it does say is that the system works, that there is research, there are checks and balances, people are looking into this material and really studying it and really analyzing, is this a good product? Are there risks with this particular aroma chemical, and do we need to kind of do something about it? And yeah, for me, that's a good thing anyway. It should be being done like that. I'd rather it that way than us not really know that what we're producing is tested and safe, and safer than probably some products that are out there that aren't as tested as much.
Yeah, totally. And I always think of musquitone. I mean, what is it, a neurotoxin?
Yeah.
Or something. I mean, like, maybe we should
Right.
get in our perfumes. That's okay. Guys, we have about 10 more minutes. I want to make sure that the folks in the audience have a chance to ask their questions. And I also want to say hi to Nikki and Mark. Hi, Nikki and Mark. Yay, nice to see you guys. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat, or actually, better yet, unmute or raise your hand and unmute and ask directly. While you gather yourselves for that, I'm sorry for the totally markety type question, but what's next for Escentric Molecules? What are you guys doing next? It's your 20-year anniversary.
Yes. Well, we've just launched a new M+, which is M+ Sisters. And I mean, Geza can talk about the olfactorial profile of that. And we have 2 more M+s coming out in the new year, staggered releases. We're launching a larger edition for the 20th anniversary of EMO1. So they're in 200 ml refillable bottles.
Oh my God, we could take a bath.
And because they're refillable, wait for this, they have a cap. we never do caps, so that's good. That's a first.
Okay, that's true because you don't have those. Yeah.
No, we didn't really. We just thought it. In the end of the day, it became something that we just considered back in the day was superfluous, and
And
so
you were probably right. Yeah.
and we never went there. You know, the landscape now is a very different landscape, and so obviously we're constantly evaluating things. But these 200 mils are refillable and have a cap. So,
Awesome.
But you will have to mention that the cap is outrageously beautiful.
So can you give us
the cap is outrageously beautiful.
a verbal hint at how beautiful it is and why?
I'm trying to see if I've got one in the drawers.
Yeah.
Even better.
No, I haven't got one in the drawer. Actually, I can go and get one. What Geza is talking about?
Because whenever I think of caps and Geza Schoen, I think of the Renegades project with your crazy
That was
cap, but it was the
that was very outrageous at the time. I think we might have overdone it a bit.
it was amazing.
It's a bit of a miracle why that sort of didn't, I don't know, why that didn't survive for longer. But yeah, that was quite something. But the what I like about the new cap here is that it is just so valuable when you hold it. And
Wow. Oh, on the middle finger. Thanks, Paul.
what you don't see,
That's a pretty great cap.
you know, these lines, which is important to understand.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see that, like a record.
Exactly. It's like an amplifier dial. Do you remember the old 1970s?
Yes, yes, I do, because I'm Gen X, my friend. I do.
Exactly. So it's exactly that.
That's actually beautiful.
In anodized aluminium, so it's solid turned aluminium. And then it's got these very, very fine textures that the camera is going to struggle to kind of record.
No, but what we're catching is sort of the reflection, not the
yeah,
moire.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So there you go. That's the cap.
I look forward to taking that and putting it in my car and pretending I'm in an old car.
Exactly.
And then the sense for these two, for M plus Cistus and the two coming out, Geza, do you want to?
M plus Cistus is, as always, a big chunk of ISO Super, together with Cistus Absolu, a particular quality from LMR, from IFF, which is very, I mean, first of all, it's very powerful. Labdanum or Cistus obviously usually are just like one part of a leather note. So we've kind of left it with the Cistus Absolu and not much else, to just simply play on the ingredient. And again, like with most M pluses, not much around. So it is the sort of the logical step from, okay, molecule is fine and enough for you, to you want a little more, then it's the M plus. If you want a lot more, then you look into the eccentrics. So funnily enough, that placed itself over time within the middle of our sort of key products, but quite nicely somehow, I think.
Are there people, I mean, you said that at some point in this conversation, you just in passing said, oh, you know, if one molecule isn't for you, blah, blah. Are there people who are like, oh no, this is not for me? Like, have you had rejection in that way? I mean, have you had criticism in that way?
I mean, maybe in the very beginning, when some people felt, oh, this is you're cheating, they said, as if sort of it would have been chiseled in stone that you only use ingredients in a certain way and you just don't do it else. So that was, I mean, still it's funny to think about that some people just didn't or couldn't hack the sort of the step forward to isolate those smells and make them available. But overall, no, there's Paul, I mean, do you get criticism for us being simple with things?
No, not criticism, but obviously, like all fragrances, you know, there can be a Marmite reaction. It's
I have an English mother. I'm well acquainted.
But so I think, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, there are certain fragrances that make me sneeze, but not ours. I hasten to add. You know, if you're sort of in a store and someone's wearing something that is really soapy, then I usually have to leave, otherwise I'll start sneezing like a.
Yeah. I actually, Cece in the chat pointed out that it's the argument that people make. So I don't know if you remember back in 2002 or three, there was the Turner Prize in England, in London. And the winner was an artist called Martin Creed. And his work was the lights turning on and off in the Tate Gallery. Do you remember this?
Yep.
So of course, you know, the Guardian, or not the Guardian, the Sun was like, you know, I can do that, you know, this is not art. And that's the argument that I hear a lot in art world, which is my background, and also the argument that I've heard about which you do, especially with obviously not the compositions, but with the single series. So how do you respond to that idea that you know, just because you can do it, I guess I can do that argument, you know,
Yeah, it's the same old thing. It's like Malevich's black square. You know,
exactly.
Yes, you can paint a black square, but you didn't.
But you didn't. And also context, right? Context is everything. Like when you guys came out with this, it was coming out of the 80s, right? So no, it would have been, the context is so important to the process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of kind of stripping things back and paring them down when the world was in a kind of maximalist kind of frenzy was very different. But you know, it was a product at the end of the day. It was an idea and a product, and it
worked.
Yeah, the laurels only go so far in that respect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, both Geza and I don't really mind if people don't like it and don't are upset by it or offended by it. That's totally fine. I mean, there are people that like it and people that don't, and that's
not
how
everything's for everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. How boring the world would be if it was.
Tell me about it. All right, guys. Well, any questions from our happy participants? It's you now have the once in a lifetime opportunity, 5 more minutes to ask anything you want. I mean, not anything, something polite, please, of Geza and Paul. Okay, Anna, you have a question. I'm going to ask you to unmute. In from Moscow, correct?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the lecture. I wanted to ask something like when the molecule came out, the niche market was pretty small. Now, as you can imagine, with all the fairs and everything, and everyone starting their own project, the market is oversaturated, in my opinion. So, what do you think? How can you stand out in such a big crowd? Is it possible? Is it only like being super niche and doing like a small project that is like, I don't know, Pine Words is extremely small, but it caters to a specific audience?
This is Chad.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Hi, by the way.
I think for us, we've always been quite sort of insular looking. We've always looked inwards for inspiration. We've always looked inwards to understand how we create projects and products. Geza's not really looking outwards in terms, outwards in terms of the fragrance market and the trends and what's going on to come up with the ideas that he comes up with and the fragrances that he comes up with. And I think that helps us not get too concerned by this burgeoning marketplace and a fragrance launching every day or whatever is going on. And we stay true to what we do. And to some extent are really pleasing ourselves. It's Geza and I, and we don't have a kind of a corporate above us. We don't have shareholders. We don't have a kind of financial background that means we have to kind of please them by hitting certain targets. We can do the products we want and launch them as we wish to. So I think we're quite insulated from it. And sometimes it's nice to look around and see a fragrance launched and a project launched that's actually interesting. And please don't ask me to name one because I'm going to struggle. I generally look around at the fragrance market, and I even comparators. I really have that kind of element of jealousy of thinking, damn, I wish we'd done that, or how did they get to that before us, or any of those kind of feelings. I'm always really more excited by what we're doing next and what we're going to be doing, and obviously, the 1 to 2 years to 3 years in the future we can't disclose on here. But we have that all those ideas mapped out. We know what the next 2 or 3 years will bring in terms of what we're doing. And I think that helps me get up in the morning. Geza, anything add something to that ramble?
Listen, I think by nature, almost like by what we do, how we grew into what we do, me being a perfumer, Paul, sort of the eye and the graphic artist behind of that. Plus the concept is just so clear and explanatory. If you want to know how it works, you will understand. And maybe this is your approach. So in comparison to, let's say, probably 99% of all other brands who have not a very clear concept other than, yes, we also do fragrances and we give some funny names or some trace back to a Greek goddess or, whatever sort of narrative there is. It's kind of, we clearly know how to steer the ship and where the ship is going. As Paul said, for the next couple of years, we know what we also want to do to build the brand and to feel that we stay arcane within what we do. If that makes sense.
Hey, there's something something coming up in the future that we didn't tell everyone, which we can actually tell people. We're opening our first store.
Wow, where?
In Berlin.
Oh, lucky Berlin.
Yeah, it's not
We're
finished.
friends in Los Angeles, That's amazing. Congratulations. So are you doing the store design?
Yeah.
It's a big challenge, huh?
Yeah. Beg pardon?
Have you done that sort of interior design before?
Not for many, many, many years. I in my sort of music business days, I designed a few kind of bars in the city, and for kind of musicians and clients who then invested in setting up their own drinking hostelry. Not that they really needed to drink more, but anyway.
Everyone drink more.
So those bars were all filthy and disgusting, as I would imagine.
So
No, come on.
But it has to be said that actually my wife, Sophie, who is an architect, she helped kick that off design-wise and translated.
I forgot Sophie's working on this as well.
That's kind of important to mention.
It is very important.
Well done, Sophie. I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to visit. When is this coming? In a year or 2 years?
No, it'll be opened early in the new year.
Oh, wow. Okay, very soon. Okay. Well, everybody, let's all go to Berlin and crash him en masse. Okay. There's more amazing questions in the chat, but I'm cognizant that it's now dark in Berlin. I'm guessing it's dark in Italy. It's time for dinner.
Yeah.
So let's let our nice people go eat. Paul and Geza, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Everybody who joined us. Yeah, thanks. And everybody who joined us, thanks for taking the time to, I see the hands. Hi, guys.
Thank you, everyone.